Hey there, time travelers and curious minds. Welcome back to the Adventure Box podcast, where we don't just talk about history, we roll up our tunics and live it. Hypothetically, that is. No time machines were harmed in the making of this podcast. I'm your host, Zach Edwards, and today we're heading to a place of fertile rivers and mysterious cities. That's right. And ancient innovations. It is the Indian subcontinent. Now, India is at the bottom of Asia. It is one of the lower countries in that area. I have a map. I want to show you this map. This, my friends, is the India subcontinent. But we are not just talking about India. We will also talk about Pakistan and Afghanistan. Remember, the Persians ran Iran right here. But we will talk about all of this area, up to Nepal and down to the lowest coast of India. So, here we go. Now, I always talk about 3 things. Maybe sometimes 2, maybe sometimes 4. But always at least around 2 to 4 things. Today, we will be talking about the agriculture of the area. As you can see in the map, it is very green. Now let's get a better map. One that actually shows you the vegetation. Very fertile area. Many jungles, many pieces of farmland. Much desired for the ancient people of the ancient world. Now, we're diving into what is called today, we are diving into what we call the Indus Valley. Now again, this includes Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, India, and all the other countries round about, and the early days of ancient India. So, grab your clay pots, tie up it's called a dohontis, which I will talk to you in a little bit, and brace yourself for monsoons and buffaloes and the dawn of one of the world's earliest civilization, which we don't know much about, and I'll go into that, of where the mystery is. So let's go way back, okay? Here we go. To understand any ancient civilization, you've got to start with geography. Where is it? What does it have in the geography? How do we actually become more understanding of that place? So the geography, do you know what that is? It's the study of the land. Because location isn't just about real estate, like houses and buildings. It's about survival. Every ancient civilization was about survival. We've talked about this many times in the past. So let's picture the Indian continent. It's like a giant triangle, upside down, sticking out of Asia. Now, it borders by mountains. There are many mountains in this area, up here, in the Pakistan and Afghanistan area. Many mountains surround this area. That is why the people in Iran didn't come down altogether into India and take over these fertile lands. Now, there is a group of them that did. They were called the Indo-Aryan, which is part of Afghanistan, Persia, and up to even Ukraine, who came down into this area. But today we are not talking about that. We are talking about the ancient Indus Valley civilization. That is the first thing we will be talking about after we get through a little bit of the geography. So let's picture it. The Indian continent. Again, big giant triangle jutting out from the underside of Asia. Now, first off, I talked to you about the mountains. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth. I can't just say the mountains. So let's actually go into what each of these were. So first, we are going to look up the Indus River. The Indus River. So the Indus River is actually right here, in this area right here. So this is why this is all green. So this river actually kept many people out from coming in to Afghanistan, into the Indus Valley. The river runs from present-day Pakistan and gives us the Indus Valley. You know, when water runs through it, it erodes the land. It creates a valley between two mountains. That's why it was called the Indus Valley civilization. It was the ancient superhighway, the river, bringing water, food, and trace goods from up above to down below. Think of it as the original Amazon Prime, but slower and a lot muddier. But this is how we got food from one location to the next, was the Indus River. Now, we also have the Ganges River. Ganges is right here. Let's find this. I want you to see how I'm looking these up, so you can look them up as well. Ganges River. The Ganges River is over here. This one runs, if I can zoom in. No, that's zooming out. Zoom in. There we go. Good job. Okay. This is the river. Basically, this is the river that runs, let's see, east to west. It became a sacred place or sacred river in later times. Now, here's the interesting thing. It floods periodically and helps farmers grow crops like rice and wheat. The Ganges is basically Mother Nature's, let's say, miracle grow. That's right. Mother Nature wanted its plants to grow, so it delivers nutrients to all the underlying areas. All of this area. That's why it's so green and lush. You have other rivers as well that did the same thing. Now, there's also the Sarasvati River. Let's write this one in. Okay, let's look at this one. Sarasvati. Sarasvati, if I can spell it right. River. There we go. Now, the Sarasvati River is also a very important river to India. Now, why isn't it showing? There we go. Just lower than it. This is another one. So all of these rivers delivered nutrients coming from the mountains down into the valleys, down into the land, which fed the crops, fed the jungles, and all such. But where did this water come from? This river, basically, well, let's actually talk about this. It's mentioned in ancient texts, like the Rig Veda. The Sarasvati was believed to be a mighty river until it vanished. It disappeared. That's right. A river that ghosted us long, long ago. Some think it dried up. Others think it shifted down underneath the ground. But it's still debated. This is where the mystery comes from. A lot of things in India are very mysterious, and we do not know all the answers. But we will give you all that we can. As I said, the Indus Valley civilization, we don't even know what happened there. Everything we have about them is assumptions. Why? Because we cannot read their handwriting. It's writ bad. They did a horrible job when it comes to handwriting. Or maybe it was because we can't translate their language. But where did all this nutrients come from? This nutrients came from this great place called way up high, very, very high. Some may say the highest point in the world, the Himalayas. The Himalayas is this mountain range right here. This is where you actually find, this is Nepal and Bhutan, but there's also a very, very high mountain in this area. Where is, look at this. Right there. That is what everyone calls Mount Everest. This mountain range allows water to come down from the mountains where, as you saw, all that snow. Actually, let's picture on the picture. That is Mount Everest, the highest peak in all the world. And look at all the snow. During the winter, snow piles on that. and people cannot move up. But at one point, during the summer, it'll all start melting. And the water that rushes down from that area feeds all the rivers down below. But it is because of the Himalayas that no invaders were allowed into the Indus Valley. They also feed the rivers down below by the melting snow, like I said. So this was a very sacred place to be. And yes, Mount Everest is the highest of high places, towering above the whole ancient world, and also modern day life, with many giant frozen bouncers. Basically, all these mountains became this way of keeping everyone out of this area, and all those rivers were being flooded during the summer because all that water would come rushing down into the farmland and fertilizing all the crops. But it was not just that. In this area, besides the Himalayas, besides Mount Everest, in all of India, you also had something else that was very important. And the reason why, even outside where these rivers are, it's still green. Rivers do not run throughout the whole country close to all this agriculture land or all these jungles. What does? It's called a monsoon. It's nature's dramatic mood swings, right? It's like the crying from heaven, except when they cry, they really bawl, and it all comes down. From June until September, rain sometimes could pour in and basically water all the crops, flood your house if you didn't build it well. Yes, they were though predictable in the sense they only really happened between June and September. So during that time, you planted your crops and you got out of the way. If it's rice, the water rushes over, rice can still stand. If it's wheat, it takes it out. So, predictable, yes, it predictably made the crops thrive, but unpredictably, it also created famines. Why famines? Like I said, the wheat gets washed out, there is no food. Mudslides come down and cover the rice, there is no food. Soggy sandals, yeah, basically all the time when the monsoons come through. There's one other thing you must know about the geography of this place. Now, once China basically got its mind together, became united, it actually became more of what it needed to be in order to start the Silk Road. The Silk Road was a trading network that came from China down through India, over through Pakistan, into Persia, and all the way to Europe. So India was one of the main hubs of all trade. It was in the middle of everything. Thanks to the mountains, the rivers, the coastline, the ocean, early India was connected to Central Asia, Mesopotamia, and yet stayed fairly safe. It was also connected to the Persian Gulf. Once the ships started to move along the coast, then they got worried. Then people started climbing over the mountains, and then they got worried. But the Silk Road allowed them to trade with everyone, to create a relationship where they did not want to attack them. So China from the north would almost protect them if they would trade with them. Persia, Afghanistan, those areas, they would protect them as long as they would trade with them. So this became a very vital area because this is where the food was, which would go up to China and which would go over to Persia and feed those areas as well as India itself. So yeah, rivers, mountains, monsoons, geography didn't just shape early Indian civilization, it made it. It made it what it was. Now, early India was actually a civilization. Everything from farming to migration to methodological mythological growth from the land, this all happened in India. Let's rewind the clock a little, even further than just the geography, and meet some of the earliest settlers who were there before the records were kept, before we saw the monsoons and the other civilizations who could have attacked them. Let's go a little bit further back. We are going to what we call the Neolithic era. Do you remember that? We talked about it many months before. Every major civilization went through the Neolithic era, which is basically when the people were hunters and gatherers, and they would move around as nomads. The Neolithic era is when they came back together and started to create cities and towns and villages. Before the Indus Valley cities, like Harappa and Mohenjo, Daro, there was a place called Megara, Mehrgarh, Megara. Now, give me 1 second. I needed to look it up. It is Mehrgarh. So Mehrgarh was an ancient city. Very, very ancient. So ancient, we do not have much to understand about this civilization, about this location. Before the Indus Valley cities, there was this almost mythological Mehrgarh. Now, this was around 7,000 BC in what is now Pakistan. People started settling down, not just for naps, but to build a village, many villages. No more roaming for them around hunting or gathering. They were no longer snacking on berries like woodland goblins. Mehrgarh was one of the earliest Neolithic settlements in southern Asia and most of Asia. People built mud brick houses. They grew wheat and barley. They domesticated animals like sheep, goats, and even cattle. And yes, they made very pretty pottery. Like even some would even say Mehrgarh had dentists as well. Wait, dentists? I don't like dentists even today. Why would there be dentists back then? Well, archaeologists found human remains with drilled teeth. Ouch! I'm guessing no Novocaine. So that would hurt very much. So why settle down? Why would the people in the Neolithic era settle down and make homes? Well, food security was very nice. And wandering and hoping you could find plants that grew naturally or herds that stuck around, especially when there became more people. You don't have to chase your dinner around with a spear. Plus, domesticating animals became a must. It meant free fertilizer, free milk, plowing power for the cows. That's right. You could use cows to plow your fields. This shifted the people from hunters and gatherers to farmers. It was a game changer, as they say. It gave people more free time, which they used to invent things like tools and art and boredom. Because who loves weeding a millet field at 6 a.m.? Not me. I could not last at that time. But they were also able to do art, as I said. Early settlers got artsy. There we go. That's the word. With clay. Their pots were painted. The the symmetry, the symmetric, they became symmetrical, symmetrical, there we go, there's the word. And, get this, mass production. They make many pots instead of one or two. It was the birth of even Tupperware? This was the Tupperware era, only breakable and much more stylish. And didn't seal up the food for that long, but it did. Use clay pots with something on top. The moisture gets sucked out and the food doesn't mold. It stays for a lot longer. It might dry out more than it might mold out or such. By 4000 BC, these early villagers became more complex. They created storage rooms and granaries and trade networks. Heck, they may have invented the first to-do list in history. 1, feed goats. 2, fire pots. 3, don't get angry that the monsoon spirits are over us. Megar, and villages like it laid the groundwork for urban boom in the Indus Valley civilization. So, how did that boom happen? Well, we'll save Harappa and Mohenjo for another episode. But know this, Mehagara walked. So the Indus people could build water tanks, baths, and streets with actual drainage. They were one of the most civilized and technologically advanced civilizations in the world at this time. Think of it this way. You go to a city. The newer cities, maybe not the older cities where the streets all wind everywhere, but the newer cities, take, no, Denver's not that good either. Kansas City? No, Kansas City's not that good. Okay, fine. Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City was made in a grid. The lots are square. Everywhere. Square lots. Streets completely squared off. Kansas City, much like it, but some of the towns, down in Texas too, big on grid-like structures, blocks, like city blocks. The Indus Valley civilization were some of the first to do it, including the first to create water tanks and baths and streets with actual drainage. All these things. Major advancements in living. Now, geography and early farming equals civilization. That's right. So as they created this civilizations, the rivers brought water and trade. Great. The mountains kept folks safe and gave them resources. The monsoons basically timed the seasons. And the early farmers of places like Meherga figured out how to grow food, tame animals, and store grain. And last off, the pottery was basically today's Tupperware. It looks much different. It actually looks much better back then. And last is the last attempt at the clay mug. That's right. Drink. Yeah, in clay. They made almost all of their containers and plates and bowls from clay. That is what the early pre-Indus Valley civilization was like. This is why it is so important to understand, in order to understand India, to learn the geography, to learn who came before. And honestly, they were kind of geniuses. I mean, I can barely keep a succulent alive, right? I can barely keep a houseplant alive. And these folks were planting wheat 9,000 years ago without the modern conveniences of today, using handmade tools and also some monsoon math. So let's talk about it. What have we learned today? Ancient India wasn't just about elephants and spices. It was rivers, river logic, early science, monsoons and mountains, and brilliant clay pots. It was families settling down, figuring out farming and animal growth, animal, what we call husbandry. It means raising animals. Slowly building one of the most mysterious and influential civilizations in history. Now, the one thing I did not mention yet, and we will be talking about next time, on Thursday, because this is Tuesday. Thursday is their writing. When we get into the Indus Valley, there's a mystery that you will need to solve. You may not be able to solve it. Right now, we are literally using AI to solve some of the greatest mysteries that have ever lived. And that is translating a language or languages that have never been translated before. And we have had the greatest minds, mathematicians, philosophers, all these different people trying to figure out what they were trying to say. It is coming close to that point where we will actually know what actually happened in this Indus Valley that we will be talking about on Thursday. So, next time on Adventure Box Podcast, we head deep into the Indus Valley, straight into Harappa and Mohenjo. Now, this is where ancient engineers blow our mind with plumbing from about 2500 BC. So until then, I am Zach Edwards, reminding you that sometimes the future is built on mud and goats and very, very patient farmers. So stay curious, stay humble, and never underestimate a clay pot. Now, I got one question. This is your action question, and I want to put the comments down below. Could you have survived during this time? There were no screens. There were no tools except what you made. There were no grocery stores or places to go get food. Could you have survived during this time? And if so, what would have been your highest priority? Put it in the comments below. I would love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time. That is Thursday, so please come back. Until then, goodbye, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.